Victor Whitman believed himself untouchable, a virtuoso whose reputation in the music world preceded him. And today, as he strode into the grand auditorium with its polished oak floors and towering chandeliers, he had no idea that the quiet figure he had barely noticed behind the rows of empty chairs would soon redefine everything he thought he knew about skill and presence. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Lillian Porter sat silently at the edge of the stage, her chestnut hair pulled back into a simple braid, her hands resting gently on the surface of a polished Steinway piano, her blue dress unassuming yet imbued with a quiet confidence that came from years of discipline hidden behind the unremarkable. At 38, she had long since learned the art of blending into the background, navigating the bustling conservatory halls unnoticed, cataloging sheet music with precision while her colleagues remained oblivious to the breadth of her talent. Victor's eyes swept the room with the practiced arrogance of a man accustomed to admiration, the sunlight catching the tailored lines of his black suit, the subtle gleam of his cufflinks, and the faint scent of his cologne marking him as someone of influence, someone used to commanding the attention of every gathering. The murmurs of students practicing scales, the creaking of piano benches, the soft rustle of sheet music all faded into a backdrop as he approached, his heels clicking sharply against the wooden floors, a metronome of impending humiliation. "Miss Porter," he said, his voice slicing through the quiet. "I hope you're ready to demonstrate your understanding of this concerto. Let's see if you can keep pace with a piece worthy of a master." His smirk was measured, precise, a silent challenge he assumed would leave her floundering. Lillian's eyes flicked up just once, meeting his with an unwavering calm, a faint, almost imperceptible smile gracing her lips as she acknowledged the sheet music before her. She did not respond verbally, for words were unnecessary. The room already held its tension like the taut string of a cello awaiting the first bow stroke. The faculty and students gathered, leaning against the balconies and the rows of seats, whispers of expectation curling through the air, and Victor relished the attention, confident in the spectacle he was about to orchestrate. Yet, beneath Lillian's composed exterior, memories stirred, fingers dancing across keys long after applause had faded, hours spent absorbing the nuances of Chopin and Rachmaninoff, the rhythm of her own heartbeat syncing with the crescendos and diminuendos of her imagination. A hush fell as Victor gestured for her to begin, and the first notes she played emerged with a clarity and control that belied her quiet demeanor, each key struck with a precision that seemed to suspend time, the echo of marble floors amplifying the purity of her tone. Victor's eyes narrowed, a flicker of surprise betraying the first crack in his confident facade, as the subtle complexities of the piece began to unfold beneath her fingers with an elegance that was both effortless and commanding. Lillian's focus never wavered, her gaze steady, her posture a model of calm assurance, and as the audience collectively inhaled, the room seemed to shrink around the music, the very air vibrating with anticipation and awe. Every subtle dynamic, every carefully calculated pause was a statement, a quiet proclamation that mastery need not be loud or boastful, that true talent could emerge from the most unassuming form. Victor's jaw tightened, a bead of sweat tracing a line down his temple, the applause of students and faculty held in suspended disbelief as the story of underestimation began to unfold with each resonant chord. The moment stretched, rich with cinematic detail, the anticipation of revelation coiling tighter like a spring, and the first wave of shock rippled across the auditorium, as those who had doubted the quiet assistant now confronted the undeniable fact that brilliance had always been there, simply waiting for the right moment to declare itself. The applause from the opening chords still lingered in the air like a distant echo as Lillian lifted her hands from the keys, the soft vibrations of the last note fading into the polished wood of the auditorium floor. She allowed herself a brief exhale, the kind that carried not just relief but a quiet satisfaction, knowing that each movement of her fingers had been deliberate, precise, and intentional. Around her, the audience remained suspended in a collective breath, some leaning forward, eyes wide, others pressing palms to their cheeks, unable to fully articulate the surprise that had washed over them. Victor Whitman, who had minutes ago assumed he held all the power, now stood frozen in a subtle mix of disbelief and incredulity, the polished shine of his shoes reflecting the chandelier light, but unable to reflect the magnitude of the moment that had unfolded. Lillian's blue dress caught the soft stage lighting as she adjusted her posture, settling back slightly on the piano bench, her gaze steady but her mind already scanning the auditorium, registering every reaction with the calm efficiency of someone accustomed to observing human behavior as meticulously as musical notation. The hum of whispered conversation began to swell, but it was tempered, almost reluctant, as if the very act of speaking might shatter the fragile awe that had taken hold. Students who had only known Lillian as the quiet assistant, the one who cataloged scores and dusted off benches, now looked at her with a mixture of admiration and a newfound recognition of her presence. She did not need to speak to claim the authority that had always been hers. The room had already acknowledged it in the most undeniable of ways. Victor's lips parted slightly, a gesture not quite forming words, his pride warring with the undeniable evidence of her virtuosity. He had watched countless performances, judged hundreds of recitals, and yet none had prepared him for the quiet power that had emanated from her fingertips, the way she had controlled every dynamic, every subtle nuance, every crescendo and diminuendo, with a mastery that made the complex appear effortless. Outside the immediate focus on the piano, the chandeliers cast soft golden light across the auditorium, highlighting the faces of those gathered, some stunned into silence, others exchanging incredulous glances that spoke volumes about their recalibrated assumptions. Lillian allowed her eyes to sweep across them, not in triumph, but with the gentle awareness of someone who had understood long before they did that respect is not given lightly. It is earned through quiet competence and consistent discipline. As Victor's gaze faltered, Lillian's hands rested lightly on her lap, her chest rising and falling in a measured rhythm, the residual echo of the last note still resonating in the high ceilings, a reminder of her unassuming brilliance. Somewhere behind her, the subtle movement of a stage curtain reminded the audience that life continued, yet the weight of the performance lingered, each note a testament to skill hidden beneath a lifetime of dedication. The murmur of faculty members began to swell as they gathered their composure, the realization dawning that the woman they had all underestimated possessed a command over the piano that could rival anyone they had admired publicly, the quiet genius having revealed herself not through boastful display, but through the undeniable authority of action. Lillian allowed herself the merest hint of a smile, acknowledging the subtle nods of peers and the softened expressions of students, the room's tension slowly transforming from expectation to admiration. Victor Whitman took a half-step back, his posture rigid, the edge of his professional mask now revealing a vulnerability that had not been apparent when he had first issued his challenge. The polished wood of the stage gleamed under the footlights as Lillian's fingers briefly brushed the keys once more, a whisper of sound that reminded everyone present that mastery is not measured by how loudly one announces it, but by the calm and precise execution of skill when it matters most. As the last echoes of realization settled in the room, the audience absorbed the truth they had just witnessed, the quiet woman who had been underestimated now the center of their collective respect and awe, the lesson implicit in the hush that filled the auditorium. True talent cannot be hidden indefinitely, and those who dismiss it prematurely do so at their own peril. Victor Whitman took a tentative step forward, the click of his polished shoes echoing against the auditorium walls, each sound marking his struggle to maintain composure as the realization of Lillian Porter's talent settled firmly in his mind. Lillian remained seated, her posture upright, eyes glimmering with calm confidence, yet attentive to every subtle shift in the room. She had not played for recognition or to prove superiority. Her performance had been the manifestation of years of dedication and silent practice, each note an extension of herself rather than a competition with another. Students began whispering, exchanging glances that conveyed awe and disbelief, their initial assumptions of her simplicity now replaced by an acute awareness of her mastery. a quiet reverence filling the air like a tangible current that carried across the polished stage. Victor adjusted his tie, a reflex born of nervousness rather than pride, his usual assured demeanor faltering as he attempted to reconcile the woman he had thought ordinary with the extraordinary musician she had revealed herself to be. Lillian's fingers rested lightly on the keys as she prepared for the next sequence, not to impress, but to continue the expression of her artistry, her focus entirely inward, mapping each chord and progression with meticulous attention, the piano responding effortlessly to the subtle pressure and movement of her hands. The ambient light in the auditorium highlighted the sheen of the instrument and the careful poise of her posture, drawing the eyes of everyone present, their attention rapt not by drama or spectacle, but by the undeniable skill and grace emanating from her performance. As the final passage approached, the room seemed to lean in collectively, the expectation heavy yet tinged with wonder, Victor's shoulders tightening, his hands subtly clenching as the power of the music underscored the depth of her talent and the years of unnoticed mastery behind it. Lillian's breathing was steady, controlled, her mind attuned to the music and the subtle variations in tone, the rise and fall of each phrase, the harmonic resonance that filled the space, enveloping the audience in a soundscape that spoke louder than words ever could. A hush had fallen across the seats, the echo of her skill silencing any murmurs or whispers, leaving only the pure, resonant tones of the piano and the collective appreciation of those who had misjudged her. Victor Whitman's gaze followed her movements, tracing the path of her hands across the keyboard, the reality of her genius sinking in with a weight that made his earlier confidence seem naive. The students' admiration grew as they absorbed each nuance, their previous skepticism dissipating under the undeniable proof of her capability, while faculty members exchanged glances that acknowledged the shift in perception, their respect for her cultivated in the quiet, deliberate execution of her talent. Lillian allowed a brief moment for the final chord to resonate, a soft vibration that lingered in the air, connecting the audience to the intricate mastery they had just witnessed, and then, with the faintest of nods, she withdrew her hands, signaling the end of her piece not with fanfare, but with the grace of one fully aware of her own excellence yet unbound by the need for external validation. Victor's expression faltered, a mixture of admiration and dismay, the realization complete that the quiet woman he had underestimated had altered the dynamics of the room entirely, leaving him to confront the humility required to appreciate such profound skill, while Lillian Porter's calm presence and deliberate control remained the central truth of the moment, a silent reminder to all that true talent reveals itself not through assertion, but through the quiet, unwavering demonstration of mastery. The auditorium remained suspended in a rare, almost reverent silence as the final echoes of Lillian Porter's performance slowly dissipated, each note having left an invisible imprint on the listeners, reshaping their understanding of the woman they had underestimated. Victor Whitman stood rigid, the usual confidence in his posture replaced by an unsteady acknowledgement that the narrative of the room had shifted entirely, the power dynamic he had assumed now inverted in subtle but undeniable ways. Lillian remained poised at the piano, her back straight, her hands resting gently upon the keys, her eyes scanning the audience with a calm, reflective gaze, not seeking approval, only registering the reactions as a careful observer would chart the movements of a musical composition. Students whispered among themselves, exchanging glances that conveyed astonishment and newfound respect, their previous assumptions about her simplicity and apparent inconspicuousness now challenged by the undeniable evidence of her mastery. The faculty exchanged quiet nods, recognizing the significance of what had unfolded, the room's atmosphere thick with admiration, tempered by the collective acknowledgement that the woman who had quietly navigated their halls and routines for years had revealed herself as a consummate professional of exceptional talent. Victor's gaze traced each subtle gesture, each movement of Lillian's hands as she allowed the music to resonate fully, the precision of every chord and the elegance of every pause a testament to a lifetime of disciplined study and quiet, unwavering practice. The light from the chandeliers reflected off the polished piano surface, casting soft, shifting patterns across her calm features, illuminating the careful concentration and poised confidence that had always been her hallmark, but now became the centerpiece of the room's collective attention. Slowly, murmurs began to ripple through the audience, not out of derision or mockery, but as tentative recognition, a chorus of realization spreading like a gentle tide across the seats as individuals absorbed the depth and nuance of her performance. Victor shifted, attempting to regain composure, yet each motion reminded him of the earlier misjudgment, the overconfidence in assuming that a simple demeanor equated to mediocrity or lack of skill. Lillian, sensing the change in energy but maintaining her quiet presence, allowed her awareness to extend beyond the keys. Noting the subtle shifts in posture, the widening of eyes, the soft, appreciative intake of breath from those who had doubted her. The room itself seemed to hum with the resonance of mastery, the polished wood amplifying both the sound and the silent narrative of accomplishment, creating a shared experience of awe that transcended spoken words. As she rose from the bench, her movement measured and deliberate, Lillian's presence commanded attention without force, an embodiment of quiet authority and the culmination of years of practice that had gone largely unrecognized until this singular moment. Victor Whitman's lips parted slightly, a faint inhale betraying the first signs of his reconsideration, the recognition that brilliance is often hidden in plain sight, unassuming, patient, and unspoken until it chooses to declare itself fully. The students leaned forward, captivated by the unfolding reality, while faculty members allowed themselves small, approving nods, their expressions softened by the acknowledgement of skill that had so quietly asserted itself. Lillian's gaze met Victor's briefly, steady and composed, offering no words of triumph, only the subtle understanding that mastery speaks louder than arrogance, and that patience, preparation, and quiet dedication carry a resonance beyond any immediate display of confidence or authority. The room held the echo of her performance, the space charged with a collective awareness that assumptions had been dismantled not with confrontation, but with the undeniable, calm force of excellence. And in that suspended moment, the lesson was clear: talent and diligence, even when understated, command respect and redefine the expectations of all who bear witness. As the last notes reverberated gently through the auditorium, the atmosphere remained charged with an almost tangible sense of awe, the collective breath of the audience caught between disbelief and admiration, each individual processing the revelation of Lillian Porter's extraordinary ability in their own measured way. Victor Whitman, still standing near the grand piano, allowed himself a moment to breathe, his earlier arrogance tempered by the undeniable evidence of her mastery. The carefully cultivated posture and composure he had relied upon now challenged by the calm and unassuming authority she exuded. The students, initially murmuring quietly among themselves, began to straighten in their seats, their whispers giving way to nods of recognition and subtle applause that rippled gently through the rows, acknowledging the quiet genius who had transformed a simple challenge into a demonstration of effortless brilliance. Faculty members adjusted their stance, the polished oak floors reflecting the soft shuffle of papers and the shifting weight of feet as they subtly repositioned themselves to witness the conclusion of what had become an unanticipated and unforgettable performance. Lillian allowed her hands to rest lightly upon the piano once more, feeling the familiar warmth and resistance of the keys beneath her fingers, the instrument now a conduit for the satisfaction that arises not from proving others wrong, but from the fulfillment of disciplined practice and deep understanding. Victor's eyes followed each movement, noting the grace, precision, and deliberate attention to detail that had so thoroughly disarmed his preconceived notions, a humbling counterpoint to the confidence he had carried into the room moments earlier. The chandeliers cast a soft golden glow over the stage, highlighting the quiet elegance of Lillian's posture and the understated control she maintained over the music and the space around her, every subtle movement reinforcing the realization that mastery is cultivated in silence, honed through patient repetition, and revealed not through spectacle, but through the authentic expression of skill. As the final chords lingered in the air, a gentle hush fell over the audience, the echoes resonating not only through the wood and plaster of the auditorium, but through the consciousness of every individual present. leaving an impression of calm authority and undeniable competence. Victor's hands, previously poised to assert dominance through challenge, now rested by his sides as he processed the shift in perception, the acknowledgement of her expertise written clearly across his features even as he searched for a composed response. Lillian rose from the bench with measured grace, her movements deliberate, the subtle shift in her weight, and the controlled turn of her head communicating confidence without ostentation, a quiet declaration that her talent had been fully expressed and needed no additional affirmation. The audience, absorbing the depth of her performance, allowed themselves small, appreciative exhalations, their respect earned not by words or gestures, but by the lived demonstration of capability and mastery. Each subtle nod, each widening of eyes, and the occasional soft clap reinforced the profound impact of her presence and skill, the room collectively recognizing the lesson imparted not through confrontation, but through excellence performed with humility. Victor, finally adjusting his stance, gave a tentative acknowledgement, the barest hint of a nod, a recognition that some lessons are conveyed more powerfully through action than through instruction, and that the quiet resolve and practiced ability of Lillian Porter had rewritten the expectations and assumptions of all who had witnessed her performance that day, leaving an indelible impression of respect, mastery, and the quiet authority that arises from true, unassuming excellence. The room remained still, the audience absorbing the gravity of what they had witnessed, their collective silence a testament to the power of understated excellence that required no embellishment to command attention. Lillian Porter, rising slowly from the piano bench, allowed her eyes to sweep across the auditorium, noting the expressions of awe, disbelief, and newfound respect etched on the faces of students and faculty alike. Victor Whitman adjusted his stance, the lines of confidence he had worn so effortlessly earlier now softened by a dawning recognition of the woman who had just redefined the bounds of expectation. He had approached the stage with certainty, expecting a display of novice error and the amusement of a triumph, yet realized that the performance had not only exceeded any anticipation, but had subtly, yet completely, recalibrated the dynamics of the room. Lillian moved with grace, her presence commanding attention without need for words, the quiet authority she emanated enveloping the space like a delicate, yet undeniable, current. Her fingers rested momentarily on the keys, as if acknowledging the resonance of the last notes, and the gentle murmur of acknowledgement from the audience began to rise, a slow wave of applause building steadily, measured, appreciative, and sincere. Students who had long assumed her simplicity to equate to ordinary skill now found themselves reconsidering every prior assumption, their eyes reflecting a blend of admiration and inspiration, a recognition of the dedication and mastery that had always existed just beneath the surface. Faculty members exchanged subtle nods, the adjustment in their perception visible in the slight lifting of eyebrows, the soft smiles forming at the edges of their lips, a silent acknowledgement that true talent, when revealed with grace and discipline, commands respect regardless of prior expectations or preconceived judgments. Victor Whitman's gaze lingered on Lillian, tracing the precise alignment of her posture, the effortless control over her expression, and the deliberate, yet unassuming, assertion of her presence, each detail a reinforcement of the lesson he had just been taught, without a single word spoken in challenge. The chandeliers overhead cast a warm, golden light that highlighted the subtle textures of the piano, the polished wood reflecting faint glimmers onto the audience and creating an atmosphere suffused with reverence and quiet wonder. Lillian's calm, deliberate movement as she stepped back from the instrument, her gaze sweeping across those assembled, reinforced the understanding that true mastery is expressed not through showmanship, but through the silent confidence of prepared, disciplined action. The audience, collectively holding their breath just moments ago, now exhaled in unison, the applause swelling naturally and with heartfelt admiration, a tangible manifestation of respect earned through quiet excellence. Victor, absorbing the full impact of the experience, allowed himself the briefest of nods, a subtle admission that skill and dedication, when combined with humility and composure, create a presence that no arrogance or initial judgment can undermine. Lillian Porter's eyes remained steady as she acknowledged the applause, her expression serene, a quiet satisfaction evident in the gentle lifting of her lips. The culmination of years of unnoticed preparation revealed fully and undeniably in a moment that left every witness altered in perception and humbled by the quiet, unassuming power of true talent. The auditorium, still heavy with the resonance of Lillian Porter's performance, began to settle into a rhythm of reflection, the audience collectively absorbing the weight of what had just transpired, each individual registering the quiet assertion of talent and discipline that had so thoroughly reshaped their expectations. Victor Whitman, standing near the edge of the stage, allowed himself a slow inhale, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly as he processed the profound realization that the quiet woman before him had dismantled his assumptions not through confrontation, but through deliberate, masterful demonstration. Lillian remained poised, her hands resting gently on the piano, her gaze sweeping across the audience, noting the subtle shifts in posture, the tentative nods, and the soft exhalations of admiration that spread through the students and faculty alike, all reflecting a reassessment of her presence and the capabilities that had long been hidden beneath a simple exterior. The lighting overhead cast a gentle glow across the polished surface of the piano, illuminating the soft lines of her composed posture, the subtle movement of her fingers as they lingered momentarily on the keys, and the serene expression that conveyed both mastery and humility, a combination that spoke louder than any words could. Students who had previously whispered doubts now exchanged glances, their eyes widening in recognition and newfound respect, the echoes of her performance lingering not just in the acoustic space, but in the collective consciousness of those present. Faculty members, adjusting their stance to fully appreciate the impact of the display, allowed small, approving nods, their subtle gestures communicating the acknowledgement of a talent long overlooked yet undeniable in its execution. Victor's gaze traced her movements, noting the deliberate, fluid control and the subtle authority in every gesture, his own sense of certainty tempered by the undeniable truth that brilliance can exist quietly, waiting for the proper moment to reveal itself fully. The polished wood floors reflected the gentle footfalls of attendees shifting in their seats, the chandeliers casting warm highlights across faces marked by a mixture of awe, curiosity, and admiration, creating an atmosphere that seemed to hold its breath in reverence for the skill so carefully demonstrated. Lillian, fully aware of the weight of the moment yet unaffected in demeanor, allowed a subtle, reflective smile to touch her lips, a silent acknowledgement of the recognition she had earned without fanfare, her calm and steady presence reinforcing the lesson that true mastery does not require validation from others, but asserts itself naturally and profoundly through action. The murmurs of appreciation began to swell, soft applause building gradually as the audience processed the quiet triumph, the subtle shift in collective perception acknowledging the remarkable combination of talent, preparation, and poise that had been displayed. Victor, feeling the shift in dynamic, straightened his posture, the earlier smirk replaced by a tentative acknowledgement, the first hints of humility emerging as he considered the depth of skill and restraint demonstrated before him. Lillian's eyes met his briefly, steady and composed, a look that conveyed not arrogance but the quiet assertion of competence and confidence, leaving an impression that resonated deeply across the room. The auditorium remained charged with the subtle energy of revelation, the lesson clear in the attentive expressions and hushed, reverent exchanges. True ability, when expressed with focus, patience, and poise, commands recognition and respect, quietly but undeniably, transforming not only perception but the understanding of what it means to witness excellence performed with integrity and unassuming mastery. The audience sat in suspended attention, the lingering resonance of Lillian Porter's final chords still vibrating softly through the polished wood and high ceilings of the auditorium, a quiet testament to the disciplined mastery that had just unfolded before them. Victor Whitman, standing a few steps behind the piano, allowed himself a slow, deliberate exhale, his previously assured posture softened by the undeniable evidence of Lillian's extraordinary talent, the confidence he had carried into the room now tempered by a new, humbling awareness. Lillian's hands rested lightly on the piano, her gaze moving methodically across the audience, noting the subtle reactions that reflected a profound reassessment of her presence and skill, the murmurs of admiration and tentative applause carrying the weight of recognition long overdue. Students who had once whispered doubts among themselves now leaned forward, their expressions a blend of astonishment and respect, as the reality of her expertise settled into their consciousness, each note of her earlier performance echoing in memory and shifting perception simultaneously. Faculty members exchanged quiet glances, the soft nods of approval and gentle smiles acknowledging the depth and precision of a skill that had been quietly honed over years of disciplined practice, the subtle elegance and unwavering composure of her performance leaving a lasting impression that would shape their perception of her for years to come. Victor's eyes followed the movements of her fingers even now, the ghost of the music still vivid in his mind, each gesture a reminder of the thoroughness and grace with which she had asserted her presence without a single overt display of boastfulness or confrontation. The warm glow from the overhead chandeliers highlighted the polished surface of the piano, reflecting both the subtle contours of her composed posture and the faint ripple of excitement that passed through the audience, a collective acknowledgement of the quiet power that emanated naturally from her disciplined expertise. Lillian rose slowly from the bench, her movements measured, deliberate, and infused with an understated confidence, the gentle sweep of her gaze reinforcing the realization that mastery is revealed not through assertion but through quiet, consistent excellence performed at the perfect moment. The audience responded with a crescendo of applause, the sound gradually building, sincere and unforced, carrying the acknowledgement of her achievement throughout the space, transforming initial surprise into deep, genuine appreciation. Victor adjusted his stance, the weight of his own assumptions now clearly evident in the subtle lines of tension in his shoulders, the faint shift in his expression revealing both respect and the beginnings of introspection as he considered the lessons implicit in her performance. Lillian allowed herself a composed, reflective smile, acknowledging the recognition without claiming it, the calm poise she maintained reinforcing the idea that true skill asserts itself naturally and commands respect effortlessly, leaving no room for superficial judgments or the arrogance of assumption. The audience, captivated, remained attentive to her presence even as the applause continued, absorbing the unspoken lesson that excellence, when expressed with discipline, patience, and quiet determination, resonates far more powerfully than any display of arrogance or performative superiority. Victor, his gaze lingering on her for a long moment, finally nodded subtly, an unspoken acknowledgement of the brilliance he had underestimated, while Lillian Porter, serene and composed, allowed the moment to settle, the room collectively appreciating the quiet, undeniable authority that comes from mastery performed with integrity and unassuming confidence, a truth that would remain indelibly imprinted in the memory of all who had witnessed it. The final moments in the auditorium carried a weight of silent acknowledgement, the space infused with the lingering impression of Lillian Porter's extraordinary performance, a quiet authority that had redefined every expectation previously held by those present. Victor Whitman, standing a few steps back from the piano, allowed his composure to return gradually, the rigid lines of his posture softening as he processed the full impact of the demonstration, his confidence transformed into a reflective respect that he had not anticipated. Lillian's gaze swept across the audience one last time, her eyes meeting those of students, faculty, and peers, each encounter registering a subtle, wordless communication of mastery, patience, and the understated assertion of skill that did not require fanfare to command attention. The students, now fully attentive, absorbed every nuance of her presence, their whispers replaced with the soft, genuine murmurs of admiration and the occasional nod of acknowledgement, a recognition that the quiet woman who had always existed on the periphery of their perception was in fact a consummate artist. Faculty members exchanged subtle, approving glances, their expressions softened by the realization that years of unnoticed discipline and consistent practice had culminated in a display of pure, unassailable skill that required no external validation. Victor Whitman, observing Lillian's steady poise and the calm grace with which she concluded her performance, felt the first stirrings of humility, a recognition that true expertise is communicated not through declaration, but through the quiet execution of ability when it matters most. The chandeliers above cast a warm, steady light across the polished wood of the piano and the stage floor, illuminating the serene concentration and deliberate movements that had defined every aspect of her performance, highlighting the contrast between understated composure and the depth of her talent. Lillian stepped back from the instrument, her motions measured and precise, allowing the room to absorb the finality of her demonstration, the gentle resonance of the last notes still vibrating softly through the space, reinforcing the impression of accomplishment and skill that had been quietly, yet powerfully, asserted. The audience, fully cognizant of the remarkable display, allowed the energy in the room to settle into a reflective silence, the weight of observation and realization tangible in the stillness, a shared understanding that brilliance can exist quietly, unassuming yet profoundly effective when given the chance to manifest. Victor's lips parted slightly as he considered the depth of preparation, the subtle control of tempo, tone, and expression, his earlier certainty replaced with a recognition of the patience, dedication, and resilience that had culminated in Lillian Porter's undeniable mastery. Students leaned slightly forward in their seats, their expressions of awe and respect now fully formed, while faculty members nodded in quiet acknowledgement of the demonstration's significance, a collective understanding settling over the room